Solve by completing the square. 2x squared minus x minus 1 equals 0. Again, we have an equation where there's a leading coefficient on the x squared. So the first step is to get rid of that by division. Here, we need to divide both sides of the equation by 2 to get rid of that leading coefficient. When we do this, on the left, this gives us x squared minus x over 2 is the same as 1x over 2, and we can write this as 1/2 x. It's nicer to do it that way because eventually we need to know the coefficient on the x, so writing the coefficient separately is a little bit helpful. Then we have minus 1/2 equals 0 on the right, because 0 divided by 2 is 0. Now before we can complete the square, we want to move the constant term away so that it's out of the way. To do that, we're going to add 1/2 to both sides. This leaves us with x squared minus 1/2 x equals 1/2. And now we're ready to complete the square. To do this, we need to take the coefficient on the x and divide it by 2. Negative 1/2 divided by 2 is negative 1/4. You can think of taking 1/2 and dividing it in 2. That gives us a fourth. So we've got negative 1/4, but then we have to square it. Negative 1/4 times negative 1/4 is positive 1/16. So the quantity we have to add to both sides of this equation to complete the square is 1/16. Once we've added 1/16 to both sides, we're ready on the left-hand side to factor the perfect square trinomial. When we factor this, we end up with x minus 1/4 squared. And on the right, to add 1/2 plus 1/16, we're going to need a common denominator, which is 16. 1/2 becomes 8/16 by multiplying the top and bottom by 8. And 1/16 remains the same. 8/16 plus 1/16 equals 9/16. So on the right-hand side, we end up with 9/16 when we add those together. And now we're in the position where we can use the square root property. When we take the square root of the left-hand side, we're left with just x minus 1/4. On the right-hand side, we have plus or minus. And when we take the square root of 9/16, that becomes 3/4. So we have x minus 1/4 equals plus or minus 3/4. Now, to get x alone, we need to add 1/4 to both sides of the equation. This leaves us with x on the left and 1/4 plus or minus 3/4 on the right. To figure out what the solutions are, we need to look at these two separately. So we know x could be 1/4 plus 3/4, or x could be 1/4 minus 3/4. That's what the plus or minus symbol gives us. And now we can evaluate each of these expressions to figure out the value of x. 1/4 plus 3/4 gives us 4/4, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. So the first solution is x equals 1. For the other one, 1/4 minus 3/4 is negative 2/4, and this reduces to negative 1/2. So that's our second solution, and that means that our final answer is going to be x equals 1 or x equals negative 1/2.